At this very moment, there is a child out there who holds an encyclopedic knowledge of deep-sea creatures or historical dates. They can rattle off these complex facts endlessly, while grown-ups simply nod along, secretly questioning if the child's mind is quite right. Meanwhile, in some corporate building, an employee easily spots a tiny flaw in a contract that dozens of colleagues completely missed. Or picture a boardroom where someone delivers a brutally honest observation, leaving everyone squirming and later whispering about their poor social grace. Society has plenty of labels ready for these individuals, quick to brand them as weird, overly intense, or difficult to work with. We have constructed a modern environment that views their unique cognitive wiring as an error that desperately needs fixing. But consider this scenario: turn back time far beyond our current corporate structures, schools, and rigid definitions of a typical mind. That identical brain structure, which we currently diagnose as a condition, might have been the absolute most crucial asset to early communities. The young one memorizing endless wildlife trivia transforms into an unparalleled master of tracking game across the wilderness. The individual catching minute discrepancies becomes the vital lookout, and the bluntly honest speaker is revered because they are utterly incapable of deceit. So, instead of asking what is broken within the autistic mind, we should be asking, what if it was perfectly designed all along? What if these traits were never a defect meant to be left behind, but an essential mechanism that helped early tribes flourish? Keep watching, because by the time we finish, your entire definition of what constitutes a normal brain will completely shatter. We must begin by dismantling a deeply ingrained societal belief that paints autism solely as a tragic product of the modern era. People blindly assume that in a ruthless ancient environment demanding perfect social adaptability, these beautifully distinct minds would have quickly perished. At first glance, it makes sense to assume our ancestors needed to be socially agile and endlessly adaptable just to survive. We tend to believe that anyone easily overwhelmed or socially awkward would have been quickly abandoned by the pack. However, that completely misrepresents how human evolution actually functioned, a reality science has only recently begun to understand. The undeniable truth is that a community composed entirely of identical thinkers is incredibly vulnerable to collapse. When everyone shares the exact same strengths and identical blind spots, a single unforeseen challenge can wipe out the entire tribe. Genuine strength stems from variety, relying on unique individuals who observe the world and solve problems in entirely different ways. Scientists now refer to this as complementary cognition, proving our success relied on blending wildly diverse mental approaches together. When you picture an early human community as a balanced mental ecosystem, the neurodivergent brain stops looking like an accident. Rather, it emerges as a highly specific role that our ancient evolutionary framework was practically designed to utilize. Let us break down these characteristics one by one, examining exactly what this unique specialist provided to the group. We will start with the most commonly misunderstood feature, that intense, all-consuming obsession with a very narrow subject. Modern classrooms and corporate offices treat this hyperfixation as a massive inconvenience, a frustrating distraction from the standard routine. Yet, if you transport that very same relentless focus back into a prehistoric setting, the entire dynamic shifts. Staying alive back then required an encyclopedia of vital data, from tracking animal migrations to identifying highly toxic flora. A brain wired to obsessively and joyfully master endless intricate details was the ultimate vessel for preserving that critical survival knowledge. Decoding meteorological shifts, mapping constellations, or deciphering exactly how massive an animal was from a single footprint wasn't merely a hobby. This monumental, complex database of natural lore dictated who lived and died, and the community desperately needed someone to safeguard it. So, an intellect designed to hyperfocus and gleefully devour every microscopic detail isn't defective, it's the ultimate human archive. They became the undisputed experts of local flora and fauna, pouring thousands of hours into a single discipline to ensure survival. Even as the broader population navigated the messy world of tribal politics, these dedicated individuals quietly constructed the foundations of communal security. The very traits we actively suppress in modern children were once the blueprints for mastery, because superficial knowledge was a death sentence. Moving beyond mere obsession, there is an incredible talent for recognizing subtle patterns and pinpointing minutiae that ordinary brains simply filter out. Today, being hyper-aware of a buzzing fluorescent bulb or a crooked painting can easily feel like an overwhelming burden. Yet, in our ancestral environment, this heightened perception was essential, allowing a person to spot the faintest hoofprint or a hidden predator. It was the difference between sensing an impending storm from a slight atmospheric shift, or distinguishing a deadly fruit by a single leaf. A brain that instinctively scans its surroundings and flags those hidden anomalies wasn't broken. It was the ultimate defensive radar. They were the unparalleled trackers reading invisible trails and the cautious gatherers who safely navigated treacherous foraging grounds. But this unique cognition goes far beyond simple observation. It thrives on systematizing the world and uncovering its hidden mechanics. Rather than getting tangled in chaotic interpersonal dramas, many neurodivergent minds find immense satisfaction in unraveling exactly how physical systems operate. Consider the intricate craft of shaping flint. Forging a lethal blade demanded a patient, mathematical understanding of angles, force, and stone fracturing. A brain obsessed with perfecting a process and flawlessly repeating it is exactly what it takes to manufacture superior equipment. Because of this extreme precision, crucial survival methods could be handed down to the next generation without losing their effectiveness. In fact, experts suggest that sudden explosions in early technological progress were driven entirely by these highly focused, detail-oriented individuals. Having these specialized thinkers in our ancestral tribes perfectly coincides with eras of massive cultural and inventive breakthroughs. It is highly likely that these uniquely wired creators actually engineered the very tools that propelled human evolution forward. Beyond toolmaking, there is another characteristic often overlooked as a strength, yet it remains profoundly beautiful: absolute candor. Neurodivergent individuals frequently possess an unwavering, sometimes blunt directness, remaining completely unbothered by the manipulative white lies neurotypicals play. While modern society often misinterprets this lack of social deception as a flaw or an inability to read cues, history viewed it differently. Imagine living in an ancient, tight-knit clan where everyday survival depended entirely on mutual reliance and unwavering trust. In that life-or-death environment, the most valuable ally was someone whose promises were ironclad and who simply refused to lie. You needed a companion who wasn't secretly plotting, trying to climb the social ladder, or exploiting others for personal gain. Scholars argue that this raw, unfiltered transparency was absolutely vital for early communities that survived purely on mutual cooperation. The very individual society now labels as socially awkward would have been considered the most dependable soul in the entire camp. Closely linked to this absolute honesty is a fierce immunity to peer pressure, allowing these minds to resist conforming to popular opinion. Today we might call them stubborn, but resisting the blind momentum of groupthink prevents a crowd from confidently marching toward disaster. When hysteria catches on and terrible concepts go completely unchallenged, it is usually just because people are blindly copying each other. In those critical moments, the greatest asset to the tribe is the individual who focuses solely on hard facts rather than social harmony. While the rest of the community spirals into chaos, this person calmly steps back and says, "Hold on, this just doesn't make sense." Being slightly detached from the collective mood is exactly what allows a mind to remain incredibly sharp during a sudden emergency. Both human progress and our very survival have frequently relied entirely on that lone dissenter who simply refuses to play along. Then we must consider the sensory aspect of this neurological profile, which undeniably acts as a double-edged sword. For many on the spectrum, the physical world hits with amplified force, bringing deafening noises, blinding brightness, and overwhelming textures. Surrounded by the humming fluorescent lights and chaotic traffic of contemporary society, this intense reception is genuinely agonizing and utterly draining. Yet, if you place that exact same heightened awareness into a primal landscape, it transforms into an extraordinary level of acute perception. They are the ones detecting a rustling leaf others ignore, or catching the faintest scent of distant smoke long before danger arrives. Out in the unforgiving wild, sensing a hidden predator just a fraction of a second earlier was a sentinel's ultimate gift to their people. The exact same sensory overload that makes a modern supermarket agonizing would have made them the perfect early warning system for ancient nomads. Finally, consider the deep appreciation for strict routine and the intense desire to execute tasks in a highly predictable, methodical sequence. While our current fast-paced world dismisses this as mere rigidity, early human survival depended heavily on exact procedures and unwavering rituals. Without written language, safely preparing potentially toxic foods or crafting essential tools required someone who would perfectly repeat the process across generations. Someone had to safeguard those exact instructions, ensuring they wouldn't slowly shift and degrade as time passed. When a single mistake in a preparation ritual means certain death, unyielding consistency becomes your greatest asset. Now, step back and look at this entire collection of distinct traits we have explored so far. You have the intensely focused master of a specific craft, alongside the sharp-eyed lookout who spots hidden threats. You also have the logical system builder, the fiercely honest communicator, and the lone thinker resisting dangerous herd mentality. When viewed together, this absolutely does not look like a catalog of mental flaws or strange shortcomings. Instead, these are crucial, indispensable roles that directly supported a thriving and functional early human community. Through this lens, an autistic mind is never just a defective version of a highly sociable individual. It is an entirely distinct kind of expert, perfectly wired to handle challenges that standard thinkers simply cannot. This brings us to the core of complementary cognition, an incredibly elegant concept once it finally clicks into place. A truly prosperous tribe was never just a massive crowd of identical personalities. It operated as a diverse ecosystem. Naturally, the community desperately needed those charismatic networkers to maintain relationships and efficiently defuse interpersonal conflicts. Yet, those social harmonizers couldn't survive without the deeply focused truth-tellers guarding their collective blind spots. These contrasting mindsets were never intended to be rivals. They functioned flawlessly as two necessary halves of a resilient whole. However, I need to pause here, because romanticizing this as a magical superpower ignores the very real, heavy challenges involved. The reality is that the spectrum is incredibly broad, and pretending it's purely advantageous does a massive disservice to those living it. For certain individuals, this unique wiring manifests exactly like those brilliant, hyperfocus specialists we just talked about. Conversely, others on the spectrum face profound barriers, from being entirely nonverbal to requiring constant assistance just to navigate daily life. Brushing off those severe, daily difficulties with comforting stories about ancient ancestors simply isn't fair or accurate. I absolutely refuse to claim this condition is a secret gift, because for countless families, the struggle requires tangible help, not cheap inspiration. Furthermore, we absolutely cannot pretend that the prehistoric era was some sort of inclusive utopia for those who stood out. Survival back then was a brutal, unforgiving endeavor, and not every tribe warmly embraced members who deviated from the norm. But the main argument isn't about the past being gentle, it's a much more precise and practical observation. These distinct cognitive profiles were not inherently flawed, nor were they automatically destined for failure in the wild. Under the right circumstances, possessing a brain wired this way offered immense, tangible benefits to the entire community. Groups that integrated these hyper-focused minds likely possessed a survival edge over the tribes composed entirely of socialites. So, this completely shifts our perspective, whether you are analyzing your own behavior, your child, or a misunderstood peer. This neurological profile isn't some contemporary epidemic. It's an enduring variation of human wiring that has always existed. Humanity has always relied on that solitary figure who remembers crucial details and perceives dangers the distracted crowd ignores. The actual human brain hasn't mutated. Rather, we've constructed an artificial environment of chaotic offices and endless networking that actively punishes this exact mindset. We constructed a modern society defined by blinding fluorescent lights, noisy open spaces, and relentless demands for superficial socializing. Our educational systems were engineered to churn out adaptable generalists, creating an ecosystem that is actively hostile to focused, detail-oriented thinkers. Because this neurological type struggles to survive in a realm explicitly designed against it, we wrongfully label it as defective. It is completely irrational to assume a creature of the deep ocean is broken simply because it cannot survive in a dry desert. For the vast majority of human history, this exact cognitive style was not just functional, it was a highly successful, contributing force. It only began to appear as a glitch when our culture decided that every single person must be an outgoing, flexible multitasker. So, if you constantly feel slightly disconnected from the social crowd, preferring to dive incredibly deep into your singular passions, if you are painfully honest, rely heavily on your daily routines, and spot the tiny details everyone else entirely overlooks, you need to realize that you are absolutely not a defective or failed variation of a regular human being. Instead, you are a master specialist who simply happened to be born into a society that forgot how much it relies on specialists. Our ancient ancestors absolutely depended on the solitary thinker who viewed the environment from an entirely different, incredibly focused perspective. For countless generations, these unique, unyielding minds were not a medical puzzle to be fixed. They were the reason our species survived at all. Humanity never dominated this globe by relying on a single, uniform type of flawlessly social, smooth-talking brain. We succeeded through a wild diversity of minds, where the quiet, truthful, and meticulous worker caught exactly what the distracted majority dropped. That mind was never broken, it was just specialized, and we desperately need it today, even if our overwhelmingly loud world tries to silence it.